I recently lost my dear faithful companion, my dog Hugo, and he'd been suffering with an illness with cancer and he'd been in a lot of pain. So, about a week ago, I had to make that decision for him and have him put to sleep. And I was absolutely devastated. I can't believe the pain that I went through after he was put to sleep. It was just the most awful thing. It's like losing a member of your family. And it got me reflecting because I had lots of friends and family that sort of came and supported me, checked in on me, called me every day, just checking in and all that kind of thing. And I would have been really lost without that, I think. And I think that that definitely made my recovery a lot easier. I mean, I still miss him. If I let my mind go there, there's still a lot of pain. But because I had people around me checking in on me, it really did help me. It's helping me through that recovery. And it was just my dog and I. I live on my own. I'm a solo person in my 60s. And so to come home to an empty house when you don't have a partner or anyone else living in the house and it's so empty, it's just the most devastating feeling. You just don't want to be there. I wanted to just, I got home from work and I just wanted to turn around, straight around and go out the door and just go running down the road. The pain was just so raw. So without people phoning me as soon as I walked in the door and having a chat, I would have felt that pain a lot more and it would have been a lot harder. But it got me thinking about how we age and our worlds close in around us a little bit more. We become a little bit more isolated. Friends drop off along the way. We may not be in contact with family as much. And we think that we're happy like that. And we are. Like, I'm an extremely independent person. But when a crisis happens like this, it makes you really realize that you do need that community around you. So today I'm going to talk about that a little bit and how important that is. So welcome to my channel. For those of you who are returning, thanks so much. Welcome back. And if you're new here, my name's Leanne. So today I'm just going to go through a few things about how important it is to have that community around us. And especially as we age, I think that there's stats that I'll go through soon about the aging population and how isolated they are and that loneliness or that sense of loneliness. And it was just, as I said, my dog passed away and it's so traumatic. It's like losing a human member of your family, especially when they are your companion. He slept in my room. We were together all the time. He was by my side constantly, except when I was at work. And I talk to him all the time like a human being. So to lose that companion is just devastating. And it was so lovely because I went to work. My colleagues were so supportive. They were all around me. They were really just so supportive with my pain and what I was going through. I got invited to a house for dinner after work if I didn't want to go home. I had one of my other colleagues sending me texts and checking in on me to see if I was okay. And I really, really, I was so grateful for that because the pain is so raw and at times you feel like just screaming at the top of your lungs because of that pain. And it's really nice to know that people are around you. And I'm a really independent person. I love my solitude. I always thought I was an extrovert, but I think I'm a little bit of an introvert, really, because I find that if I spend too much time amongst a lot of people, I feel quite drained energetically. So I need to go home and have some me time and just lock myself away and do my own thing. So I think I've got a little bit of that introvert in me as well. And so I do like my time. I'm pretty good at looking after myself, as in, I've got my set of tools and I can sort of climb up on ladders and I can fix things and do stuff. So I'm actually quite independent with, all sorts of things. But sometimes I think that independence can go against you, especially as we get older, because it's not that you're intentionally shutting people out. It's just that you don't need to lean on people. You're sort of quite stoic, I guess, in lots of ways. And I think that's a great thing. I love it. That's what I like about me. But I think that you need to be, it's made me really aware of being too much like that as I get older. I don't want to be, I don't want to shut everyone out so much, and not intentionally either. This is just sort of, unintentionally because of that sort of independence. The death of my companion just made me realize it was a real awakening to me, and it had me thinking about aging and making an effort to stay in contact with friends and family. And I tend to get busy. I'm still working full time. I've got a busy life. And so I tend to sort of just go off and do my own thing. And so I might not reach out and contact friends for a long time. I'll sort of wait, or they'll contact me. And it really made me realize that I do need to probably put some time, definitely make time, more time for friends and family. And I was also, before my dog Hugo passed away, I caught a virus, and this was going back probably about 3 months, and I was bedridden for about 3 weeks. And that also had me thinking about, wow, I'm so sick and I'm bedridden, and there's no one here that can, check in on me. And because I'm so independent, I don't want to reach out too much to people, or you just have this mindset of, oh, I don't want to be a burden on people. And I guess I'm a little bit like that, so I don't tend to reach out. But it really made me think during those times of just sort of, days and days in bed feeling like crap, that you're so on your own. And they say that a lot more of us are living on our own, and I will share those stats with you. In fact, I'll go through them now because it's quite interesting. So I'll go through, I'll sort of share Australia because that's where I am, and a bit of the US because a lot of my watchers, a lot of my people are from the States. So the stats as of 2021, I know that's a few years ago, they reckon over 1.2 million Australians are aged 65 and over, basically, and of that, 25 to 27% live alone. Women are more likely to live alone. Approximately 40% of women 75 plus live solo, compared with 22% of men in the same age bracket. So it seems that there's so many women as they age, like they outnumber men considerably, which I just found fascinating. Roughly 28% of Australians aged 60 plus report feeling lonely to some degree. And all people aged 65 plus, 16 of all people aged 65 plus, 16% report loneliness, and 11% report that they feel socially isolated. So in the US, those stats are a little bit higher. 27 to 28% of 65 plus people are living alone. Women 65 to 74 years of age, there's 27% living alone. And in the 75 to 84 age bracket, 43% live alone. With men, 65 to 74 years of age, it's 21%, so that's lower than women. And in the 75 to 84 age bracket, 24% live alone. So once again, the women really outnumber the men in this sort of living alone. So America's just a little bit higher than Australia. Roughly 1 in 3 older adults still experience loneliness, and roughly 1 in 3 older adults are still experiencing loneliness and social isolation. So there's a really, I don't know, like it's so high, and I was really surprised at the percentage of women that are living alone in their older age compared to men. Like that's just so surprising. So it's just really important, I think, to just be aware as we age that we do have to reach out and make a little bit of an effort to contact friends, to just pick up the phone and say hello, to organise, to have lunch with people, and just check in and just step forward a little bit more with keeping those connections. And it really made me, it was a bit of a wake-up call, really, I guess, when Hugo died. And I still like my independence, but it made me really think about, as I get older, Yeah, just being involved in community. They say that there's a lot of health risks that come with being living alone as well, and feeling isolated, and just living your life on your own, and not going out and seeing friends, not having social interaction, and just not maybe being involved with family. And one of them is heart disease. So all of these sort of health problems, and I don't know why heart disease comes into it, but it does. Dementia is another one. It's huge with people living alone, which is a bit scary, really. And also depression, obviously depression. So I just think, like as we get older, all of a sudden we're not going to weddings, we're going to funerals, and people are sort of dropping away from us. And I don't have a massive circle of friends. I've got a small circle of friends, and it's just made me realize that I will catch up with them more. And I think it's also, if you don't have a large circle of friends, you might be sort of, you might not only have one or two. But I can see now why a lot of older people, probably in their 70s and over, there's a lot of people really actively involved in clubs and hobbies, and they might go to sort of fitness classes for older people. They might play bowls, all that kind of stuff, and keeping actively involved in that. And I can understand why, because I think it's more important as we age to really sort of not become isolated. And you do need that support. And as I said, when my dog passed away last week, the amount of support that I had was just incredible. And I was just so much in a world of pain, but it really did help me work through things, because I could talk about my dog, I could talk about my feelings, just everything that I was going through, my tears, lots of crying, and just and then distraction, because we would talk about my dog and then go on to other things about life in general and people we knew and things like that. And then before I knew it, I'd been on the phone for 2 hours and having this wonderful conversation. So it really, and when I hung up, I felt so much better. And it didn't mean that I didn't go back to that place of sorrow, but all those little incremental steps to be able to process pain and work through it, and being able to talk through that, with people, is so important. It's part of that healing process. And even though I love my own company and I am independent, I really don't want to be just invisible as I age. And I think that a lot of older people do go through that. I think that they become, they just fade, people just fade away into non-existence as they age. I think I think a lot of responsibility is up to us to be consciously aware of, just have that self-awareness to understand that as we age, that, as we're getting older, that can be happening. So just pushing those boundaries out a little bit and making sure that we stay connected with community and have that support around us, so that people are checking in. And this is especially, I mean, now I'm still working, I'm still switched on, I'm still really independent. And, so I'm fine. I've got work colleagues and I've got an active life. But I'm thinking about, 20 years from now, when I'm 83 and onwards, I don't want to start drifting into this nothingness, and not having that support around me, because you hear about it, and I think it's really sad. There's a lot of older people out there that are really lonely. And I also get that, in the job that I do, and I get with people, calling to pay their rates, or I had a lovely old lady that called me yesterday, and to let me know she was 84, and she had to let me know that her little Maltese terrier, she had to put it down. It was 16 years old. It had been her companion, and she lives on her own. And she helped. She wasn't teary. She was actually quite good, and she was so sweet. And she said, he's been my little companion for 16 years, but he was blind, and I had to make that decision. And she said, I won't get another one, because it'll outlive me, so I'm not going to get another one now. And I understood that, but then I thought, wow, you're on your own, and she had family around her, but it's yeah, it's just interesting. I just think that we just need to be really consciously aware, and it's not making that decision or becoming aware of that when it's too late, because at her age, 84, she's probably not thinking like that. She's probably not thinking about the things that I'm talking about now. So it needs to sort of happen from an earlier age, like the age I am now at 63. I'm really aware of it. I'm not panicking about it, but I'm just very aware of not letting that happen, and therefore reaching out to friends, making new friends, having community around me, because now is the time to sort of start putting that in motion and practicing that, if that makes sense, instead of waiting until it's too late. And it is too late, I think, at that. I mean, it's never too late, but I think it's harder at that age. So now, I mean, you might be okay with that. You might be one of these people that you're totally okay without having that support. You don't want community around you and you want to be isolated. And that's absolutely fine. If that's your thing, absolutely fine. But I do believe that for most people, it's not their thing. And I think if you're sort of sitting around my age now, and especially also, it's not just for people who are solo. I think even if you're married, and you've been in a long-term marriage, you might find that, if you think about it, your partner, most of your friends might be on his side or on her side. And so even though you all catch up together, they might be your husband's friends, really, or your wife's friends. And so therefore, when something happens, they might be initially supportive, but that may drop off by the wayside, if that makes sense. So I think it's really important to be aware of that as well, and not just relying on your partner's friends to be your social group or your community connection. I think you also need to have your own, not just your partner's, because eventually that could drop off. If anything happens to him or her, then they might fade away into the distance after a period of time if something happens to your partner. So it's having your own group, your own community, your own friends around you, and now is the time to start thinking about that, and just start thinking about your future as we're getting older. I'm 63, and time is, like, wow, I can't believe I'm 63, but you just have to sort of think about your community around you and not cut off. It's quite interesting also, because they say that as we age, it becomes, you don't want to put as much effort in. And I don't mean, yeah, well, it's sort of into your friendships as well, but it has to be easy. Like, so therefore your friends, the proximity has to be, of where you live, has to be close, because eventually you'll drop off. If your friends live too far away, you'll eventually, that contact gets less and less and less. So there's these sort of things around maintaining your community groups and your friends, where it has to be your interests. Proximity is a really big one as you age, because otherwise, if you've got a friend who lives 100 kilometres away, eventually you'll see less and less of each other. And it's the same goes for like work. Like I've been in my new job for about 4 months. And before that, I was, in my different role, and I had a really close friend that we used to catch up all the time. We're on the phone to each other all the time, colleagues. And now, because I've started a new position and I've drifted away from that, and he's gone on to something different, we don't talk as much. We don't catch up as much. We don't phone each other to chat as much, because we're in different industries now. So before, we were ringing up and talking about work and, sales and people and all sorts of stuff. But because we've both changed, that conversation has dropped, and that the contact has faded. So we still catch up, but nowhere near as much. So it's really quite interesting. So you have to sort of keep that in mind as well. So if you're involved in a community group and you play, cards or something, you've got that interest. If you're part of a walking group, you've got that interest. If those people who you walk with live close by, then that's easier, because you can just catch up for coffee around the corner. So it's really also being aware of those things, those interests, so you sort of catch up and talk about that. and also the proximity being not too far away, so it's not an effort to have to drive too far and do all that kind of stuff. And I know that sounds really like, well, why wouldn't you drive that far? But it's just our natural human nature that becomes a bit of a hassle to have to go too far out of your way. So it has to be, and they talk about this, there's research done around this, so it's having those groups in that close proximity, friendships around you in that close proximity and things like that. So just being really aware of that as well, and also just making that effort, make that effort, pick up the phone. And it might be that you're the one that does that more, but that's okay. I don't think you should be getting into the mindset of, oh, well, they never call me, or it's always me making making the arrangements and things like that. Doesn't really matter. Don't get hung up on that. I wouldn't get hung up on that at all. That's neither here nor there. I think that it's up to us to make that effort and just focus on on our actions and us giving and things like that, if that makes sense. But yeah, very, very important. And this week has been a real week of opening my eyes and realizing a few things. And that was one, that importance of the friendships as we get older and the community around us was really important after I lost Hugo. So one to have a really good think about if you're, 60s and above, have a think about that, and your independence, if you're solo, even in a partnership, it's so important. You don't want to be in that place of isolation and loneliness as we age. I think to have a thriving, interesting and thriving and fulfilled old age, then that is an extremely important part of it. So yes, I hope you enjoyed this episode today. Let me know your thoughts, and leave some comments down below. Thank you.